which is really important for me. I can inspire from the Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and Jet Li. I'm Tony Jaa from Thailand and play Deja.
They said he was the next Bruce Lee. For a few short years, it felt true. Tony Jaa flew through windows, dove over cars, and landed knees first on villains with a precision that didn't look rehearsed. It looked real. And it was no wires, no CGI, just pure, bone-rattling action that redefined the martial arts genre. But just as quickly as he rose to global fame, he vanished. What happened to the man behind Ong-Bak? Why did the most promising martial artist of his generation disappear just as the world opened its arms to him? This is the story of Tony Jaa. And it's not just tragic, it's heartbreaking. Before he was a movie star, he was Phantom Yiram, a quiet boy growing up in Surin, a rural province in northeastern Thailand. His family were elephant herders and farmers. Their life was modest, even harsh at times, but it was honest. His parents taught him about dedication, responsibility, and tradition. But Tony had another passion, one that didn't come from the fields. Every year, temple fairs would come to town, and with them, grainy VHS tapes of Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Young Tony would watch the same scenes over and over again. Not just watching, studying. Then, he'd run outside and practice the moves until the sun went down. He wasn't just mimicking, he was training. At age 10, he began formal Muay Thai training under local masters. He was disciplined, sharp, and relentless. Every day, he kicked banana trees until his shins went numb. He didn't want to become like his heroes. He wanted to surpass them. That fire caught the eye of legendary stunt coordinator Punna Ridikrai. Punna was known in Thailand for pushing his stunt team to the limit, and Tony was a perfect fit. Agile, fearless, obsessed. For 14 years, Tony worked behind the scenes in the Thai film industry, doing stunts, learning choreography, and mastering multiple disciplines, from Taekwondo to Judo to Aikido. He trained like an Olympic athlete, but with no spotlight. Yet, deep down, he knew his moment was coming. Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior, wasn't supposed to be a global hit. It had a tiny budget, no big-name stars, and was made for Thai audiences. But when it was released, the world took notice fast. Tony Jaa was like nothing audiences had ever seen. Every punch, kick, elbow, and knee felt real because it was. He didn't use stunt doubles. He didn't rely on CGI. And he didn't pull his hits. This was raw, kinetic violence, but choreographed like a dance. Every move had weight. Every impact had meaning. Audiences were stunned. Critics were impressed. And action fans were obsessed. Tony's follow-up film, Tom Yum Goong, known as The Protector in the US, featured a now iconic 4-minute continuous fight scene. No cuts, no edits, just pure athletic chaos. That scene alone became legendary. It proved he wasn't a one-hit wonder. Suddenly, he was being called the future of martial arts cinema. Jackie Chan reportedly wanted him for Rush Hour 3. Hollywood came knocking. And for a moment, Tony Jaa stood on the edge of superstardom. But behind the scenes, a different story was brewing. His rise was real, but it was also fragile. And the higher he climbed, the less control he had. At the height of his fame, Tony Jaa wasn't celebrating. He was fighting a different kind of battle, one far away from the cameras. His career, as it turned out, didn't fully belong to him. While fans across the world were calling him the savior of martial arts cinema, Tony was still bound by an ironclad contract with Samankel Film, the Thai production company that discovered him. The same company that had launched Ong-Bak was now calling every shot, his projects, his schedule, even his earnings. Despite global recognition, Tony had almost no freedom to choose his roles or shape his career. As the offers rolled in from overseas, he couldn't take them, not without studio approval, and that approval rarely came. What made things worse was his growing tension with Punna Ridikrai, the very mentor who had helped build him from the ground up. Creative differences started to fracture their once close bond. One high-profile project, a historical epic they had been developing together, fell apart entirely. For Tony, it was a turning point. The people he trusted most were now on opposite sides of the fight. Then came Ong-Bak too. Determined to take control of his own narrative, Tony stepped into the director's chair for the sequel. He wanted to do it all, direct, star, choreograph. But the weight was too much. The production spiraled out of control. Cost ballooned. Timeline stretched. Pressure mounted. And then, Tony vanished. He disappeared from set, stopped answering calls, and for weeks, no one could find him. The action star who once hurled himself through flaming hoops had now vanished into silence. When he resurfaced, it wasn't at a studio. It was at a Buddhist monastery. He had become a monk. In Thailand, ordaining as a monk isn't uncommon. It's seen as a rite of passage, a way for men to find clarity or honor their families. But for Tony, this was more than a spiritual journey. It was an escape. He needed peace, a reset. After years of physical punishment, creative frustration, and emotional exhaustion, he walked away from it all. But while he found stillness in the temple, the industry kept moving. The break cost him more than time. It cost him momentum. Back at Salamanca, chaos erupted. Ong-Bak 2 was left unfinished. Investors panicked. The studio's trust in Tony was shattered. And when he finally returned, things weren't the same. In 2013, after years of tension, Tony made a bold move. He tried to leave Salamanca altogether. A chance had come to appear in Fast and Furious 7, a dream project that would finally introduce him to Hollywood audiences. But the studio pushed back hard. They claimed he was still under contract. And if anyone wanted Tony Jaa, they have to pay. The reported figure? $50 million. That legal battle dragged on, tying his hands and keeping him away from the very industry that had once begged for his talent. The longer the fight lasted, the more doors closed. And by the time it ended, the opportunity was gone. While other action stars were building global franchises, Tony Jaa was trapped. Not by lack of talent, but by paperwork and power struggles. He had once been hailed as the future. But now, the future was moving on without him. When Tony Jaa returned to the spotlight, the world had changed. Years had passed since Ong-Bak shook up action cinema. New stars had emerged. New trends had taken over. The raw, wire-free intensity that made Tony famous had been replaced by CGI-heavy blockbusters and superhero spectacle. Still, the call from Hollywood finally came. In 2015, he appeared in Fast and Furious 7. Then came XXX, Return of Xander Cage in 2017. For fans who had waited years to see him in a global spotlight, it felt like redemption was on the way. But there was one problem: Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. In both films, Tony's roles were surprisingly small. While he was billed alongside big names, he rarely spoke, and his screen time was limited. His fights were brief, thrilling, yes, but a far cry from the full-length showcases he'd once commanded in Thailand. Fans were confused. Critics were disappointed, and Tony was sidelined. Part of the issue was language. English wasn't his strength, and in Western films, dialogue often carries the weight of the story. While Jackie Chan leaned into physical comedy and Jet Li carved out a stoic intensity, Tony struggled to find a persona that translated. Producers didn't give him the room to adapt. Instead, he was often cast as the silent enforcer or one-dimensional henchman. His scenes were cut down, his impact softened. What should have been his big breakout became a missed opportunity. The other issue was control. In Thailand, Tony had choreographed his own fights. He understood how to build tension, rhythm, and character through movement. But in Hollywood, those decisions were made by committees, second units, and producers who didn't fully grasp his style. The result? Overproduced, underwhelming action that failed to showcase his strengths. And even as he tried to build momentum overseas, shadows from his past followed him. The legal dispute with Salamanca had left scars. Some studios were hesitant to work with him, worried about potential red tape or contractual blowback. Others simply didn't see him as bankable anymore. Too much time had passed. Too much momentum had been lost. Worse, the industry had moved on. Donnie Yen was now a household name. Iko Uwais, star of The Raid, had taken the mantle of gritty, high-impact martial arts cinema. New fans didn't even know who Tony Jaa was. He kept working. He stayed fit. He appeared in smaller roles, regional films, and streaming action flicks. But the days of global hype were behind him. And in a strange twist of fate, the very things that once made him legendary, his commitment to realism, his refusal to fake stunts, his humble beginnings, were now barriers to success. He didn't fit the mold. He never did. And that was both his power and his curse. Tony Jaa never stopped being great. But sometimes greatness isn't enough. In the years since his meteoric rise and quiet retreat, his name has become almost mythic among martial arts fans, a symbol of what could have been. Ong-Bak still gets revisited in action circles, praised for its intensity, its realism, its refusal to compromise. There's no doubt Tony changed the game. Before him, Muay Thai was known but not widely understood. After Ong-Bak, it became a global obsession. Fighters adopted his elbow strikes. Directors studied his choreography. Even today, his training footage is passed around like sacred text, a masterclass in physical storytelling. But when people speak of the greatest martial arts stars of all time, his name often gets left out. Why? Because legacy in cinema isn't just about skill. It's about timing, access, freedom, the right team, the right market, and sometimes just plain luck. Tony Jaa had the talent. He had the fire. But the world didn't meet him halfway. He spent his prime years trapped in contracts that kept him from Hollywood. His attempts to break out were delayed by lawsuits, broken partnerships, and an industry that didn't know how to market a quiet, intense man who preferred action to sound bites. He didn't speak the language of fame, and so fame moved on. Unlike Bruce Lee, who controlled every frame of his image, or Jackie Chan, who charmed his way into international stardom, Tony was never given that kind of autonomy. He was a performer in someone else's machine, never quite the driver. Still, what he left behind is unforgettable. He reminded the world that martial arts could still be dangerous, that action didn't need wires or green screens, that discipline, dedication, and fearlessness could still stop an audience in its tracks. There's a quiet power in that. And even if his career didn't follow the path fans once imagined, even if the Hollywood dream slipped through his fingers, his work still echoes. New stars still cite him as an influence. His scenes still go viral. His name still matters. And maybe that's enough. Because Tony Jaa didn't just punch through glass and leap through flames. He punched through an industry that didn't know what to do with someone like him. And in doing so, he left a mark that can't be erased. So the question now is this. If he had been given the same freedom as his heroes, the same platform, the same creative space, could he have carried the torch for the next generation of martial arts cinema? Or was the system never built for someone like Tony in the first place? Let us know in the comments what you think of his story. And if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more forgotten legends.